Welcome back. Today, Mr. Chen and I are going to be talking about the different types of blocks in Scratch and how we can use them to build up code. So what you might have noticed so far is that there's blocks in Scratch can look different. These three blocks right here, you might have noticed that they have a notch on the top and a bump on the bottom. So these three blocks all look the same. You'll see that they can be stacked up against each other. These blocks are called command blocks or stacked blocks. Another type of block is a block with a rounded top. These blocks right here with the rounded tops are called trigger blocks, and they're always put at the top of a stack, and they can be used to start the code based on an event that's happening. So you'll see this one has a green flag. This one might be a block that says that triggers the code triggers the program when the space key is pressed. You'll notice that this one has many different options on it. So all the options that you see on the keyboard here. This top right here is pressed. It's in the control section right here, and it's triggered when a clone is started. So these are the type of blocks right here that are called trigger blocks, the one with the rounded top. These blocks right here are called C blocks, and you'll see that there's two different types of C blocks here. There are C blocks with a flat surface on the bottom here, and that's because these C blocks go at the end of the script. So here, if I pull these down, they require having blocks inside of them, so you'll see that there's a notch, or there's a bump at the bottom here. That's because you can snap blocks inside this C block. Now this one's a little different than this C block because this one you'll see should go in the middle of your script because it has a bump at the bottom here. So you'll need code that goes underneath that. So you'll have to bring in some code here, and as well as code on the inside too. And you'll notice that this particular C block has an opening with pointed that's looking for a block that has pointed edges, just like this light blue block. So this will fit right in here. These light blue blocks are called function or reporter blocks. You'll notice that there are certain spaces where they fit in. They also do not have notches on the top or the bottom, so they can't be put in a stack by themselves. They can only be inserted in places where they have rounded edges or the pointy edges like this. So the pointy edged block like this is something that gives back a value that's either true or false. So if I put it here, it says if it's touching, and I could say mouse pointer, then say hello for 2 seconds. So this block is issued, it will give back a value of either yes, it's touching, or no, it's not touching the mouse pointer. So these pointing blocks have two values that are given back, either true or false. Whereas these rounded blocks give you back a value. So this rounded block in particular, it gives back a value of where the mouse, the vertical position of the mouse.
All right, so now we're going to go over each individual palette, and we're going to start with the motion one. So in motion, a lot of these palette names are very self-explanatory, but in motion we go over any kind of block that will move or rotate the sprite. You look down here, there's a lot of X's and Y's, and it will also have the if on edge bounce. In addition, it has these reporter blocks at the bottom that have checkboxes next to them. If you check them off, it'll actually show the current value of that reporter block or that variable. So if we check these all off, we can now see the X and Y position of this sprite. As you can see, I'm moving around and the numbers are changing. And additionally, if we change his direction, just by clicking on this a few times, you can see his direction also changes. It's usually best used when you're trying to figure out what's wrong with your program, or just to make sure the numbers look right. And once you're done with them, you can just check them off and they will go away. Next is the looks palette, which includes everything that your sprite will say. I don't even have to drag it out. Anything that your sprite will say, or how it looks. You can show and hide it, hide and show it, and mess with the effects here, size, color, and if you drop this down, there are a bunch of effects that you can play with. Again, there are more reporter blocks that you can check off here. Okay. Next is sound. This has everything to do with playing sounds. There's various ways to play certain notes, of which we're not going to go over in this video, but know that everything here has to do with sound. Pen has to do with drawing with your sprite. So if you use the pen down, then anywhere that your sprite goes, it's going to leave a trail of a certain color or width that you set using these. You can see that all of these are actually command blocks. There are no other types of blocks in the pen palette. Next is the data block. Now you might notice that there's no blocks here at all, but if you make a variable, and we'll call this test, once you make a variable or a list, the variables, oops, I already made test, let's make test 2. All those blocks appear and they actually show up automatically. So if you don't see any blocks, that's because there are no variables or lists. In the events palette, there's mostly trigger blocks. As you can see, all of these, all of them except for the last two, have a dome at the top, which means that they should be at the top of a script, like that. Now the bottom two, that say broadcast message 1 and broadcast something and wait, these are event blocks, which you can send messages out to all your sprites to either sync them up or trigger an event or something like that. We'll go over them more at another time. In the control palette, this has everything to do with the control flow of your program. That includes directing where, how and when code is going to run, whether the code is going to run or not, and how many times the code is going to run. That's why we have the repeat blocks, the forever block, and the if then, else, etc. It also includes any blocks that have to do with clones here. The sensing palette has all the blocks that have to do with detecting things. So you can see many of these have question marks, right? And we mentioned before that the pointy block means that it's either going to be true or false. So it's checking to see if it's touching, the mouse pointer or the edge. You click on the down arrow to bring up a list of possibilities. Whether it's touching a certain color. When it comes to colors, anytime you see a little colored square, you click on it once, you should see a little gloved hand, and anything that you hover over will become that color. So let's say if this is touching Scratchy's color, orange, we just click on there and now it becomes orange and our mouse is back to normal. Additionally, when you have these blocks that are checking to see if something's true, you can drag blocks into there as well in case maybe what you want isn't there, or it depends on some variable of some sort. But that's more of an advanced mechanic. The sensing palette also includes the blocks relating to time. It has a built-in timer in which it will actually tell you all the seconds that have passed since it was last reset. So if you wanted to keep track of something, that is how you would do it. So the operator palette has everything to do with math and logic. So you can see here we have our 4 basic operators, plus, minus, multiplication, and division. You can pick random numbers, you have your inequalities, and or not have to do with logic, which we'll go over later. The other blocks we'll also probably be using at some point, but for now, don't worry about them. And lastly, there is more blocks where you are allowed to make your own block, and it's very customizable. And again, that is something that we'll be exploring at a later time.
Last but not least, I wanted to cover what the backpack will do for you. So you'll notice I have several things actually in my backpack. You're not going to have as many things. The way that you use a backpack is, let's say that you developed a script for Scratchy and you want to change it to a different sprite. So if you chose, a different sprite like this, but you have all this script now for Scratchy and you want to transfer it to the ballerina. So here's Scratchy's script. Let's say that you want to use this script right here. What you can do, a backpack basically is a way to store script for other sprites and for other programs. So the backpack is always there, whatever project that you're in. So you can click and drag this into the backpack and it makes a copy of it in the backpack. So you'll notice this is the script that I just dragged in here. That way, when I click over to the ballerina, I can click and drag this script up like this. Also, if I go and I open up a new program here, I can drag any of the script from another program up into this area. And that's it, the backpack is always there. Sometimes you may not see it, and that may be because you may start working and you're not actually logged in. You'll notice that you're logged in if your username is up here. And you'll also notice that if the backpack's not available, that oftentimes you're not logged in. That's it. That's the lesson for today.